Hello, people, and welcome to the show. It is Monday night, and sadly, this week is starting on a really sour note. We have some very sad and serious things that have happened, and we're going to discuss those tonight. We're also going to talk a little bit about the evidence that is starting to trickle out about the connection between the Proud Boys and the White House. It's not that we didn't know, but now we're starting to get verifiable proof about it, and we're going to talk about that. And of course, I'm going to answer your questions. But before I do that, I want to thank everybody who is supporting the show, who's watching the show. If you can watch 10-minute segments of the show on YouTube for free, and that's at But What It Really Means Is on YouTube. And you can also join our Patreon community to watch the entire content of the show, which I really hope you do. And I hope you tell your friends, your family, your posse, your crew, and everybody that follows and pays attention to you to do so. So let's start off talking about what happened in Boulder, Colorado just this afternoon. Yet another mass shooting has occurred in our country. We don't have very many details about that event. At this point, there's no confirmation of the number of people who have been killed, although there was confirmation of fatalities. We have no confirmation as to who the shooter is, although there was a person arrested on scene who was a white male. I'm not going to tell you that that is in fact the shooter because I don't know that. We have not heard any details about this person. But this does come on the heels of a shooting just, 4 days ago, where 6 Asian women and 2 others were assassinated by a gun-toting, misogynistic, racist incel. And this person was given lethal capacity to carry out his darkest desires. And we keep giving people the mechanism to act out their darkest desires. And we do it over and over and over again. And every measure that we try to take to reduce gun deaths and assassinations like this is opposed, not just by gun lovers, but by the weaponization of protecting gun manufacturer sales, because that really is the purpose of the NRA. Sadly, that isn't how the NRA began. I mean, back in the day, NRA was really about gun safety, and it was about reducing gun accidents, and it was a totally different organization, but probably around the late 1980s, early 1990s, the NRA changed tack. It raised a whole lot more money, became far more activist in the political space, but more importantly, it became an organization that was principally about the member organizations, which are principally gun manufacturers. And what the NRA decided its mission was to gin up and whip up grassroots support for legislation that protected gun manufacturers and sellers. It protected them from liability for the deaths caused by their weaponry, design flaws. It even protected them from, if your gun explodes in your hand because it was badly machined, right? And then, of course, it took it that next step. It started to feel like its job was not just to protect manufacturers from regulation and protect them their revenue, but then it was thought its job was to generate revenue. And the way that the NRA went about generating revenue for gun manufacturers is to demonize, terrorize, and create and fetishize gun ownership, right? They took this whole new tack where it was like, not only do I have a right to own a gun to protect myself or my property or my family, but I have the right to own a gun to take on the government when I feel the government is being tyrannical. That is not in the Constitution, and it never was. In fact, the opposite is true, right? The purpose of the Second Amendment in the Constitution was so that a well-regulated militia could be mustered quickly for defense of the state. These people are not claiming to defend the state or any state, right? They're claiming to defend what they view to be their interpretation of tyranny, against tyranny, whatever their view of tyranny is. What we saw on January the 6th is their version of tyranny is, Democrats getting control of the presidency, even though we won the election by 7.5 million votes, right? They also view that women are tyrannical and minorities are tyranny and African Americans are tyranny and LGBT are tyranny. And so now they get to use their guns to kill anybody they don't like. That's really where we are. We're in a vigilante state where where we give lethal capacity to just any person and cross our fingers and our toes to hope that they're not going to use it to assassinate people. But it's a tool of assassination, right? It's a tool of assassination. It's very stupid idea to give somebody the right to possess something that can take out a city block and then say, oh, I just hope you don't actually take out a city block with it. Well, what else is he going to do with it? I mean, the gun's purpose is to kill. And so you take it out and you take it to your shooting range. Okay, great. Most of those AR-15s and high-powered weapons, some of them you can use in a shooting range, some of them you can't. So you have this snazzy weapon, and the minute you have a quote-unquote bad day, you now can take out as many people as you want. And we allow this. Now, I want to make something 100% clear. Every country has crazy people. We are by no means the only one. Every country has people who hate women, people who hate minorities, people who hate Muslims. Even Muslim countries have people who hate other Muslims, right? There are people who hate Christians. There are people who hate immigrants. There are people who hate LGBTQ people all over the world. All over the world. So why are we not hearing about these kinds of assassinations all over the world? Because those countries decide not to arm their citizenry that way. And they fare better because of that choice. Now, I understand that the Second Amendment is in the Constitution. The Supreme Court, a current Supreme Court, has interpreted it a certain way. Okay. But that doesn't mean we can't do other things to curb gun violence. We can make it so that the background check checks for more than just whether or not you've already been convicted of something. I want to know whether you're nutty. I want to know if you're a stalker, a raper, an abuser, or a person who has delusions of grandeur, or a weekend G.I. Joe. I want to know if you've threatened someone, if you have suicidal ideations or homicidal ideations. Those are the things that the background check should actually be looking for. They should also be looking for how many weapons you already have and who you hang out with. How many have you lost or have been stolen from you? Because that suggests that you don't keep your weapons in a secure place. I want to know that you have to think about buying a weapon, that you don't just buy it one day, go out the gun store and shoot a bunch of people. If you believe there should be a cooling off period before a woman can have an abortion, then there definitely ought to be a cooling off period before someone can get a gun. Especially if they're buying a gun in an emotional state of distress, either emotionally worn out and strung out with suicidal thoughts, or strung out and having a bad day, like the guy in Georgia. So I am sick and tired of hearing the excuses about why somebody decided to shoot. The bottom line is they shot because they could. That's the bottom line. They shot people and they killed people because they were given the capacity to do so. And until we get our heads around that, we're not going to fix this problem. The good news is that there are lots of ways of coming at this problem. You've even heard me discuss them. One of them is requiring liability insurance that does a legitimate, thorough risk assessment, not background check, risk assessment before someone can get a gun. Another way is to start imposing limits and caps on gun manufacturing. Another way is taxing ammunition. There are a lot of ways that you can get at reducing the number of guns and the people who get guns and the kind of guns they get without trespassing on the Second Amendment. We just got to decide that we want to do it, and we got to get a Senate that actually cares to pass the legislation that the American people genuinely want. Sadly, I don't have the answer for how to get the Senate to move. We know what the obstruction is. We know who the obstructionists are. Somebody's job is to move them. I don't know whose job that is, and I don't know where they are in that process. But everything that is happening on American streets right now is a choice. It is a bad choice pushed for bad political motives by bad actors. We don't have to accept that under any stretch of the imagination. Colorado's been under it when it comes to guns. I mean, it started years ago with Columbine. And then, of course, the Aurora shooting, and now Boulder. It's just incredible that we have this happening in our society over and over again. And it's incredible that we have an entire political party who says that somehow accepting these kinds of assassinations is a necessary evil to the freedom to own a gun. No, it's not. You've made the argument, we've heard it, we reject it, and there's more of us. So 2022 is going to be a crucial, crucial election. I know that a lot of us could potentially be extremely disappointed with the next 2 years if we don't figure out what to do with the Senate now. But the answer is definitely going to be to come hard for those 23 Republican Senate seats that are going to be up for grabs. 23 are in play. All we need is 2 or 3 of them, and we will have control of the Senate. So let's get going. Let's get focused, because we're not going to get answers to any of America's problems having to deal with GOP senators and members of the House. There is only one thing they care about, and that is the browning of America. That is their only crisis that they're able to put their eyes on and focus on. Every other crisis is beyond their ken. And I don't believe the browning of America is a crisis at all. It's a crisis in their own mind because they're insecure. But that's it. We have a gun violence problem in this country that is absolutely fixable. There's a question of political will, not legal capacity.
If you like what you just heard, you can find out so much more and hear so much more on my Patreon channel, patreon.com/PamKeithFL. That's where you hear the rest of this discussion, and there's lots more to share.